Panama is pushing officials to make major cutbacks on the amount of shipping that passes through the Panama Canal. Did you know Mexico is on the verge of building a new rival worth $4.5 billion to challenge the canal? For the last 100 years, the Panama Canal has been a major player in global trade, serving as the main route to move goods between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. But there's a potential shakeup on the horizon. Mexico is preparing to roll out a fresh project called the Interoceanic Corridor of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. It sounds like a mouthful, right? So what exactly is this plan about, and could it really threaten the Panama Canal's long-standing dominance? Let's dig in and see what we find. Before diving into Mexico's new undertaking, let's take a closer look at the famous Panama Canal itself. Alongside the renowned Suez Canal, it's considered one of the world's most notable artificial waterways. Carved into the Isthmus of Panama, a term for a narrow land bridge linking bigger land masses, this particular isthmus unites North and South America, with the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans on each side. Measuring roughly 65 kilometers, the Panama Canal is actually shorter than its peers. The Suez Canal, for example, stretches to nearly 3 times that length, while China's Grand Canal, an incredible feat of ancient engineering, extends for a jaw-dropping 1,794 kilometers. Built over many centuries and across multiple dynasties, China's Grand Canal was critical for trade, culture, and communication in ancient times. Even though it's smaller, the Panama Canal packs a huge punch in world trade and connectivity, proving that its impact goes well beyond its physical size. Imagine looking at a map of the Americas from before the Panama Canal opened in 1914. Transporting cargo ships from one side to the other was a massive challenge back then. Picture a European ship headed to California. It had to journey all the way down to Chile, pass through the perilous Strait of Magellan, and then travel back up north again. Some ships managed in a few weeks, but for many the trip dragged on for months. There were plenty of dangers. The Strait of Magellan is known for its wild weather and unpredictable currents, and if anyone thought about taking the Northwest Passage near the northernmost tip of the Americas, it was blocked by ice most of the year, making it practically impassable for ships. Once the Panama Canal was completed, Chile and Argentina saw significant changes to their economies. Because the new canal offered a more direct route for shipping, the Strait of Magellan lost much of its previous importance. As a result, both Chile and Argentina experienced drops in the revenue they'd been collecting from ships passing through their waters. Despite its historic standing, the Strait of Magellan has had its fair share of mishaps. One of the worst incidents was in 1584, when the Spanish galleon Santa Maria del Buena ran aground, losing its entire load of treasure. Later, in 1743, the British ship Wager was wrecked in the strait because of navigational mistakes, forcing its crew into a terrifying survival test. Stories like these are stark reminders of the dangers lurking in the Strait of Magellan. Going back to 1902, the United States made a decisive move. They crafted a plan to construct a shipping canal in Central America that would cut about 12,000 kilometers off the route between the Atlantic and Pacific, allowing ships to make the crossing in roughly a day, a huge time saver. But it wasn't an easy job. Workers had to deal with dynamite, heavy drills, and steam-powered shovels to excavate over 200 million cubic meters of soil. Just think of the sheer scale. Stacking up all that earth would be 80 times the volume of the Great Pyramid of Giza, nearly twice as tall as the Empire State Building, like building a human-made mountain. Plus, the heat often soared above 40 degrees Celsius, making conditions even tougher. Tragically, around 6,000 people lost their lives during the project because of heat stroke, landslides, and tropical diseases. It was an undeniably dangerous effort. When you compare the building of the Panama Canal to the Suez Canal, which was finished in 1869, you'll notice some key differences. While the Suez Canal links the Mediterranean Sea with the Red Sea, the Panama Canal connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. On top of that, Panama's project had to overcome a nearly 30-meter elevation gap, unlike the relatively flat landscape near the Suez. To handle this, engineers installed a series of clever locks and gates so ships could transition between varying water levels as they traveled. Even though each canal faced unique hurdles, they both highlight incredible feats of human creativity and engineering for their respective times. Overall, constructing the Panama Canal ended up costing the United States a whopping $375 million. Today, that's about $122 billion. Despite all the obstacles, it officially opened in August 1914, a huge milestone in engineering history. The SS Ancon became the first vessel to pass through, paving the way for countless more to follow. In that first year, about 1,000 ships made the crossing, a figure that has steadily grown to more than 10,000 each year, moving an incredible 500 million tons of goods altogether. This heavy traffic has been a massive boon to Panama's economy. The tolls alone bring in considerable revenue, and for some of the largest ships, the cost can top $500,000, clear evidence of how critical this canal is to global commerce. It's no exaggeration to say that the Panama Canal's success has turned Panama into a major force in international trade. Even so, as of 2024, this legendary waterway could be facing intense rivalry. Enter the Tren Interoceanico, also called the Interoceanic Corridor of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, or simply CIIT. The acronym may sound odd, but it's really just a shorter form of its Spanish name. To understand where this idea came from, we need to rewind to the late 19th century, when the U.S. was busy plotting the Panama Canal. Interestingly, they weren't the only ones. In 1884, Mexico saw the emergence of a strong leader named José de la Cruz Porfirio Díaz Mori, commonly known as Porfirio Díaz. From his home state of Oaxaca, Díaz launched a bold plan after assuming power: build a railway to connect Oaxaca to Veracruz's northern coast, effectively linking the Atlantic and Pacific. It was a vision similar to what drove the creation of the Panama Canal in the first place. Amid all this progress, a big issue came up. The United States, very focused on launching its own canal project, saw the CIIT as direct competition. This stirred up diplomatic friction between the two countries, making things more complicated for Mexico. As building continued, the CIIT ran into more troubles, including a persistent smuggling problem. Even though there were efforts to tighten security, illegal activities kept happening along the corridor, making it hard for the railway to run smoothly. In January 1907, the CIIT, often called the Tren Interoceanico, officially started operations, a huge moment in its history. Remarkably, it opened 7 years before the Panama Canal did, sparking interest from global traders looking for a new shipping route. Over time, the railway moved hundreds of thousands of tons of cargo with ease, elevating Mexico's status in world trade. But the excitement over its economic boom didn't last. Problems persisted, including ongoing tensions with the United States and the ongoing smuggling threat. Despite these obstacles, the CIIT left a lasting mark on Mexico's economy, showcasing the country's inventive spirit and determination in challenging circumstances. Once the Panama Canal came into service, many shipping companies switched from the Tren Interoceanico to the new canal. This shift meant the Mexican railway lost a big chunk of its cargo traffic. 1/3 vanished in 1914 and almost 80% the following year. Even though the railway was shorter and could save time, the Panama Canal's appeal was stronger. In reality, many shipping companies, especially American ones, favored an American project over a Mexican alternative. Meanwhile, Mexico was dealing with internal conflict, including a civil war, which made businesses nervous about using the railway. The rise of cartel-related problems in Mexico also discouraged shippers from risking the Tren Interoceanico. And on top of that, businesses liked having just one water route without switching cargo to trains. All of these factors caused such a drop in traffic that maintaining the Tren Interoceanico became economically impossible, and it fell into ruin for a century. Then, Andrés Manuel López Obrador came along, a determined new president who took office in Mexico in 2018. He set about renovating Mexico's old railway network to link the Atlantic and the Pacific, aiming to offer a modern alternative to the Panama Canal next door. This bold plan was officially revealed a few months later, featuring 3 primary rail lines: Line Z, Line FA, and Line K. Work began in June 2020, clearing land, removing old tracks, and installing updated rail systems. Once all 3 lines are finished, the network is expected to top 1,000 kilometers in length. Plus, the Mexican government wants to build a number of industrial zones along the route. In 2023, President López Obrador underscored his commitment by deploying the military to secure part of the old railway that belonged to a private entity. Talks then began to arrange payment and handover of control, aiming to avoid potential slowdowns from legal battles. While the project holds real economic promise, it has drawn backlash from various groups, including indigenous communities in Oaxaca, who worry about environmental damage. There have also been clashes between protesters and workers, and in some instances, families have been forced to relocate, which adds to the controversy. Still, supporters of the plan remain confident. Experts predict the CIIT might create 500,000 jobs and draw up to $50 billion in international investment, setting the stage for significant economic changes in Mexico and reflecting López Obrador's bigger ambitions for the country. By August 2023, Line Z was completed. The following month, in September, López Obrador personally rode a passenger train over the entire line, doing it in under 9 hours, faster than a trip through the Panama Canal. Then, just before Christmas in 2023, the first trains started operating, taking locals from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific. Next, work on the other 2 lines is moving forward, with an end date set for late 2024. Even so, the CIIT still needs more upgrades before it's ready for international shipping. A key step is modernizing the ports on each end of the line so they can handle cargo vessels. Plans include constructing a massive breakwater in Salina Cruz using hundreds of thousands of tons of rock, giving the harbor better protection against severe weather. This demonstrates how focused the project is on safe, efficient ocean transport. The breakwater work is already underway, showing real progress. If everything keeps moving at this pace, the CIIT could soon become a prime route for shipping, bringing faster global trade into view. So, what does this mean for the Panama Canal? Some experts say the CIIT might turn into a cheaper, more efficient rival for Panama's famous waterway. If that proves true, companies could begin directing their cargo via Mexico's rail corridor instead of going through Panama. This might endanger the canal's viability, echoing the way Mexico's original railway got overshadowed 100 years ago. But CIIT supporters argue that it's meant to support the Panama Canal, not replace it. Despite the CIIT's potential capacity of up to 4 million cargo containers a year, the Panama Canal often struggles with limited space for ever-increasing demand. Lately, the canal has also faced operating difficulties, made worse by extreme weather. In 2023, Panama had its driest season ever, and officials had to restrict canal traffic to conserve water. This led to fewer ships being allowed through each day, creating congestion and fierce competition among carriers for the available slots. On top of that, accidents over the years have hurt the canal's reputation, causing delays and slowdowns in shipping. With all these hurdles, the Panama Canal is at a pivotal point, needing to resolve capacity, operational, and safety issues if it hopes to remain a vital corridor for global trade. One potential answer to the Panama Canal's challenges is the CIIT. By giving shipping companies an extra route during high-traffic times, the CIIT could relieve some of the pressure on the Panama Canal. Businesses would suddenly have another dependable option to keep deliveries on schedule, especially when Panama struggles with water shortages, which have previously thrown shipping plans off track. With both the Panama Canal and the CIIT in play, there's a real chance to boost global trade, since goods could flow more smoothly between the Atlantic and Pacific. A Mexican official in 2023 put it plainly, this isn't just about connecting one nation, but about linking countries all over the world. Looking beyond the CIIT, we see other big projects with similar goals. A prime example is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, designed to improve connectivity and foster economic growth between China and Pakistan. It includes everything from roads and rail lines to energy facilities. By strengthening transport options and fueling development, CPEC could help not only China and Pakistan, but also neighboring countries in Central Asia. Even more broadly, CPEC might open doors for trade between Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, in turn driving regional integration. And as major endeavors like CPEC and the CIIT expand, they could shake up the global trade landscape, creating new opportunities for economic cooperation across continents. Places like Russia, which lie near these evolving routes, stand to gain a lot from easier access to vital markets. In short, initiatives like the CIIT and CPEC are taking real steps toward better regional connectivity and economic progress, building new trade pathways that can benefit countless nations. As for the Suez Canal, it's historically and strategically important when measured against the Panama Canal. Located in Egypt, it's a critical shortcut linking the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, hugely beneficial for ships sailing between Europe and Asia. One big difference between the Suez and Panama Canals is where they're situated and which trade routes they serve. While the Suez Canal mainly connects Europe and Asia, the Panama Canal links the Atlantic and Pacific for vessels traveling between the Americas and Asia. The Suez Canal also carries vast geopolitical weight, helping ships dodge the long and risky trip around Africa's Cape of Good Hope and cutting down on both travel time and piracy risks off the Horn of Africa. Its 19th-century construction revolutionized global shipping, drastically altering trade patterns. Today, it's still one of the busiest waterways on Earth, handling a large share of the world's maritime trade. Meanwhile, the Panama Canal is no slouch, offering a crucial cross-continental shortcut for ships moving between the Atlantic and Pacific. Both canals are cornerstones of international commerce, each shaping trade flows, economic growth, and geopolitical dynamics far beyond their home regions. Coming back to the CIIT and the Panama Canal, there are other ways people have tried to connect the Atlantic and Pacific besides the Suez. One well-known concept is the Nicaragua Canal, a grand plan from the early 21st century that sought to rival Panama's waterway by slicing a route through Nicaragua, crossing Lake Nicaragua, to link the two oceans. But it hit serious obstacles, environmental worries, trouble with funding, and political pushback, all of which led to the project's suspension. Another strategy is simply upgrading and modernizing existing transport networks, rails and roads in places like Mexico, Colombia, and Costa Rica to handle more trade between the two coasts. These ideas may not be as dramatic as carving out a whole new canal, but they can still do a lot to boost regional trade. Plus, technology keeps advancing. Bigger, more efficient cargo ships are now in play, leading some experts to argue that modernizing current ports and sea routes might save money compared to building entirely new canals. By improving what's already there, it might be possible to keep up with growing shipping demands and reduce congestion without pouring massive resources into brand new projects. Whether it's the CIIT, the Nicaragua Canal, or better road and rail systems, every approach has pros, cons, and conditions, like environmental impact, practical financing, and the political climate, that determine whether or not it becomes reality.